When success makes a son forget the hands that once fed him, the heavens themselves will bear witness. This is the story of the mother in white, a love too deep to die, and a lesson too heavy to ignore. Welcome to African Tales by Hope, where African stories come alive. Subscribe and join the family of storytellers. Get out, old woman. Tendo Lari's voice split the air like a thunderclap. The guests froze inside the grand cathedral, and the sound of his hand striking his mother's face echoed beneath the golden chandeliers. Every camera stopped. Every whisper died. The bouquet dropped from Mama Lari's trembling fingers, scattering white petals across the marble floor. She staggered backward, clutching her cheek. Her eyes, wet with heartbreak, never left her son's face. "Tendo, my son," she whispered softly. "You do this in the house of God?" But his pride burned hotter than shame. "I said get out. You are embarrassing me before everyone. Look at you, that old dress, those dusty shoes. You don't belong here." The bride stood frozen, torn between fear and pity, while the choir fell silent. Mama Lari's lips trembled as she bent to pick up the fallen bouquet. "I didn't come to shame you," she said in a broken voice. "I came to bless you, even if you have forgotten the hands that once fed you." Gasps rippled through the crowd, but she turned quietly, her faded white gown brushing the cold floor as she walked toward the doors. Outside, the wind lifted her scarf, and sunlight caught the shimmer of her tears. She murmured to herself, "I wore white not to celebrate your wedding, but to bury a mother's love that gave you everything." That morning, Lagos burned with sunlight. The streets pulsed with car horns, drumbeats, and distant wedding bells. In a small wooden house near the old bus park, Mama Lari sat at her wobbly table, holding a wedding invitation her neighbor had found in the market. Her son's name gleamed in gold. "Tendo Lari weds Evelyn Odiu." She ran her fingers gently over the smooth paper. There was no mention of her name, no mother of the groom. Only silence. A faint smile crossed her face, half pride, half pain. "Heaven, they say," she whispered. "Then why does it feel like hell for me?" On the cracked wall hung an old photograph, a young Tendo grinning wide, holding roasted corn at the market. She reached out, touched his face in the picture, and tucked it into her pocket. Outside, children played and shouted. "Mama Lari, we heard your son is marrying a rich girl. You'll be on TV today." She chuckled softly. "I don't need to be on TV, my child. I only want to see him happy." Her friend Mama Kesai arrived, carrying hot porridge. "Mama Lari, please don't go," she begged. "You know he didn't invite you. Those city people don't want poor faces in their photos." Mama Lari smiled sadly. A mother's blessing needs no invitation. She rose, opened her old wooden wardrobe, and brought out a faded white dress, the one she had worn many Christmases ago. She shook off the dust and pressed it with her hands. Around her neck she hung her late husband's small chain. Then she whispered, "If I cannot sit beside him, I will stand where he can still see me, even from afar." The road to the city center was long and dusty. Mama Lari had no money for a taxi, so she walked, one slow step at a time, through the burning streets. Her sandals scraped the ground. Sweat dotted her forehead. She passed gleaming stores and billboards showing the name Lari Enterprises, the company her son had built. People looked at the old woman in her yellowed dress, holding a small plastic bouquet, then looked away. No one knew she was the mother of the man Lagos celebrated that day. By the time she reached St. Peter's Cathedral, the ceremony was about to begin. Bentleys and Range Rovers lined the courtyard. Music drifted from inside. Mama Lari took a deep breath and approached the tall gates guarded by two men in black suits. "Good morning, my sons," she said gently. "Please tell Tendo that his mother is outside." The guards exchanged glances and laughed. "Madam, every poor woman claims to be his mother these days. Move away before the cameras come." She lowered her gaze and replied softly, "Then tell him the woman who gave him his name is here. That should be enough." They didn't move. One simply pointed to the road. She stood there, the sun burning her back. Inside, the bells rang. Through the iron bars, she could see her son walking down the aisle beside his bride. She didn't cry. She only whispered, "Lord, I have no seat inside, but let my prayer sit beside him." Inside the cathedral, the choir's song filled the air like a river of gold. Evelyn stood beside the priest, her white gown glowing under the light of the chandeliers. Guests whispered softly, bracelets chiming like bells. At the altar, Tendo Lari adjusted his cufflinks and forced a smile. The priest lifted his hand. "Marriage is a vow between two hearts," he began. Evelyn said, "I do," her voice trembling. When it was Tendo's turn, his eyes drifted toward the back door. For a split second, he thought he saw a woman in white, her scarf fluttering like a ghost in sunlight. He blinked, and she was gone. His heart stumbled, but he stood straight. Then the priest said the sacred words. "If anyone knows why these two should not be joined, speak now." The words had barely faded when the side door creaked open. At first no one turned. But the choir faltered. Soft footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Every head slowly turned. An old woman in a faded white dress stepped into the light. Her scarf trembled in the breeze from the open door. She held a small bouquet close to her chest. People began to whisper, "Who is that?" The cameraman zoomed in. Evelyn's hand trembled in Tendo's. He froze. "Tendo," she whispered. "Who is she?" He didn't answer. His throat tightened. Mama Laurie stopped at the last pew, her face calm but wet with tears. The guards looked unsure whether to stop her. The priest lowered his book. A silence filled the cathedral, heavy and waiting. She spoke softly, her voice echoing under the domed ceiling. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I came to bless my son." The whispers turned into murmurs. Tendo stepped forward, face dark with pride. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed. "This isn't your place." She looked at him with love that trembled. "Every place my son stands is my place too," she said gently. "Even if it's only at the door." "Tendo, please," she continued, her voice shaking but steady. "I just wanted to see you with my own eyes on your happiest day." The crowd shifted uneasily. Someone whispered, "Take her out." Another said, "No, wait." The cameras caught every word. Tendo's jaw tightened. His mind flashed with memories, the smell of roasted corn, his mother's laughter in the market, the nights she prayed by candlelight. He blinked hard, pushing the past away. "Today is my day," he muttered. "Don't ruin it." Her lips trembled. "My son, some things can't be ruined by mothers. They are only lost by children." A mocking laugh came from the middle row. Tendo's pride snapped. He took a step closer, his voice rising. "Leave," he shouted. "Get out before I—" His words broke into silence. Then came the sound that would never leave Lagos, the sharp crack of his palm against his mother's cheek. The slap echoed like thunder through the cathedral. The bouquet slipped from Mama Laurie's hand and rolled across the marble. Petals scattered like drops of salt. No one moved. The choir stopped mid-note. Evelyn gasped but couldn't speak. Tendo's hand shook. His face was pale. Mama Laurie didn't fall. She touched her cheek slowly, then lifted her eyes to him. Eyes full of heartbreak, not anger. "Lord above," she whispered, "let my blessing go where my feet are not allowed." A soft sob escaped one of the choir girls. "Turn off the cameras," the coordinator hissed, but it was too late. The world had already seen. Tendo straightened his jacket, trying to hold on to dignity, but even his shadow seemed ashamed. The priest closed his book and said quietly, "My son, marriage is not a door to shut the past. It is a promise to kneel before the first love that ever held you." Those words struck Tendo like a blow. He looked down at the fallen bouquet. For a moment he wanted to kneel, but pride held him up. Mama Laurie bent slowly, gathered the crushed petals, and whispered, "I'll go now. Blessings belong outside the walls." She turned and walked toward the open doors. The white sunlight poured in, wrapping her in gold. Each step echoed softly, like a lullaby fading away. When she reached the threshold, the wind lifted her scarf. It fluttered once, twice, then flew like a small white bird into the light. The church remained still, a room full of power and money, yet suddenly too small for love. Evelyn lowered her head. Tendo stared at the empty doorway, his chest heavy with something he couldn't name. Outside, Mama Laurie walked into the sun, whispering, "We'll meet again, my son, but not today." By morning, Lagos was buzzing. Phones lit up with one video. The groom who slapped his mother at his wedding. The clip spread faster than fire in Harmattan. At markets, on buses, in offices, people watched in disbelief. "Ah, that's his own mother," someone gasped at Balagan Market. "No subtitles needed," another said. The radio replayed it between traffic updates and music. The city gave her a name, the Mother in White. Reporters camped outside St. Peter's. Bloggers wrote essays about pride, greed, and forgotten roots. Tendo's company phones rang non-stop. At his headquarters, employees whispered behind screens. His face, once on every billboard, now carried shame. Evelyn locked herself in her penthouse. Her last message was cold. "Don't look for me." By noon, Tendo's company, Laurie Enterprises, felt like a shaken glass tower. Calls came in from reporters, investors, and angry partners. Damage control, someone shouted in the PR office. Screens glowed with headlines. Groom slaps mother at own wedding. Tendo stood at the window of his office, staring down at the city traffic crawling like ants. His assistant spoke nervously. Sir, the shareholders want an emergency meeting. His phone buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers, reporters, messages from people he hadn't heard from in years. Then a text appeared on his screen. Evelyn, we're done. Those 2 words stabbed deeper than any slap he had given. The boardroom was silent when he walked in. Mr. Oduma, Evelyn's father and a powerful politician, sat at the head of the table. He didn't look at Tendo. You know why we're here, he said coldly. Tendo tried to speak. Sir, I'll apologize publicly. Don't bother, Mr. Oduma cut him off. The wedding is over. So is our partnership. My daughter will not share a name with a man who slaps his mother. His voice cracked with disgust. You've built towers, yes. But you've lost your foundation. He rose to leave, adding without turning back. A man who forgets his mother will never be trusted to lead others. The door closed behind him with a final thud. Tendo sat alone at the long table. Around him, the screens still glowed with numbers and charts, but they meant nothing now. He had built an empire from dust, but pride had turned it into ashes in a single moment. His PR manager entered quietly. Sir, we've prepared a statement, she said, sliding a paper forward. The words blurred before his eyes. Lari Enterprises regrets the unfortunate incident. He pushed the paper away. No, he murmured. It's not the company that should regret. It's me. He stood, his voice breaking. Where is she now? The woman hesitated. We don't know, sir. She left after the wedding. No one's seen her. That evening, Lagos buzzed with stories. At food stalls, people argued. He's heartless, one woman said. No, another argued. He's just lost in pride. Money can blind a man. Taxi drivers, radio hosts, even school children repeated the name. The mother in white. Somewhere in a small compound far from the noise, Mama Lari sat quietly outside her single room. She didn't have a television or a smartphone. She didn't know her story was now a nation's gossip. The red mark on her cheek had faded, but not the ache in her heart. Her neighbor, Mama Kesai, hurried over. Lari, the whole country is talking about you. That video. Mama Lari shook her head. Let them talk. I have nothing to say. She poured warm water into a bowl and gently washed her face. That night, she hung her faded white dress on a clothesline. Moonlight passed through the thin fabric, painting soft shapes on the wall. Inside her room, she whispered a short prayer. Lord, let him find peace before regret finds him. She lay down on her bamboo bed, her body aching from the long walk, but her heart still reaching toward her son. Across town, Tendo sat in his dark apartment, staring at his reflection in the glass window. The city lights glittered below like broken stars. He opened a small box on his table. Inside was an old photo. A young boy holding roasted corn beside a smiling woman. He pressed it to his forehead. Mama, he whispered. What have I done? Days passed. The company stock crashed. Investors pulled out. One morning, Tendo arrived at work to find workers removing his billboard. The smiling photo that once read, "We build futures." Now the slogan mocked him. His lawyer called to discuss damage control, but Tendo barely listened. I don't care about the company anymore, he said quietly. I just need to find her. The lawyer sighed. You think it's that easy? She could be anywhere. Tendo's voice broke. I'll search every corner if I must. The lawyer's tone softened. Then start where it all began, the church. That night, Lagos was quiet. Rain began to fall, first as a whisper, then as a flood. Tendo walked alone through the streets, his suit clinging to his skin. The same hands that once signed million-naira deals now trembled in the cold. Lightning flashed over the rooftops as he reached St. Peter's Cathedral. The heavy doors creaked open. Inside, the church was dark and empty. His footsteps echoed against the marble. He walked to the spot where the bouquet had fallen days ago. A faint brown stain still marked the floor. He knelt, pressing his forehead to the stone. God, he whispered, I built towers that touched the clouds, but I forgot how to bow. His voice broke. If she can still hear me, please let me see her again, even if only in a dream. No answer came, only the sound of rain tapping against the stained glass windows. He stayed there until dawn. When he stepped outside, the city was waking. Street vendors lit fires for morning tea. A street sweeper nearby looked up. "Ah, Mr. Lowry," he said softly. "I saw an old woman here last night. She wore a white dress, walking in the rain. She smiled at me, then disappeared." Tendo froze. His heart beat faster. "Where did she go?" he asked quickly. The man pointed toward the old housing compound behind the abandoned bus terminal. "There," he said. "She lives somewhere in that place." Without another word, Tendo ran into the morning rain. The compound smelled of rust and wet dust. Water dripped from broken gutters. He knocked on a faded wooden door. After a moment, a landlady opened, tying her head scarf. When she saw him, her eyes widened. You are her son," she whispered. Tendo's throat tightened. "Yes, Ma. My mother, is she still here?" The woman sighed and stepped aside. "She left 3 days ago. Didn't tell anyone where. She only left a note and some dry flowers." She led him inside. The small room was empty except for a bamboo bed, a small shelf, and the scent of soap and rain. On the table lay a wilted bouquet tied with ribbon. Beside it, a folded note. Tendo's fingers trembled as he picked it up. The handwriting was weak but clear. "If you return, don't look for me. I forgave you with the first slap. Live as if each morning I still sweep the yard, and each night I still light the lamp waiting for you. I carry no anger, only prayers. Learn how to bow your head, my son." He pressed the paper to his forehead, tears falling freely. "Mama," he whispered, "how can I live with this?" The landlady stood quietly in the doorway. "She prayed for you every evening," she said softly, "even after that wedding day. She said a mother never stops loving, only stops waiting." Outside, the rain poured harder. Tendo stepped under the awning, looking up at the gray sky. Each drop hit the tin roof like a memory. Through the rain he imagined her, walking slowly, her white scarf fluttering, bouquet in hand. "Mama," he called, voice cracking. Only the wind answered. The image faded like smoke. He stood there for a long time, soaked and shivering. Finally, he turned back toward the city. "I'll find you," he whispered, "even if I must walk to every village in Nigeria." As he left, a single white petal fell from the bouquet and landed on the floor. He didn't see it, but the landlady did. She smiled faintly and murmured, "She hears you, child." The next morning, the sky over Lagos was pale and tired. Tendo packed a small bag, slipped the wilted bouquet into it, and left his apartment quietly. No driver. No guards. Just one man on foot. He took a bus heading east, past crowded markets and dusty roads. As the city faded behind him, his thoughts grew louder. Each bump on the road felt like a heartbeat reminding him of every wrong he had done. A child on the bus stared at him and smiled. "Uncle, why you look sad?" the little boy asked. Tendo forced a small smile. "Because I forgot to say sorry," he replied. The child tilted his head. "Then say it now. Maybe she can hear." The bus jolted forward and Tendo's eyes filled with tears. Hours later, the bus stopped in a small village surrounded by green fields and almond trees. The air smelled of wet soil and wood smoke. Tendo stepped down, his shoes sinking slightly into red mud. People recognized him at once. They whispered among themselves, "That's him, the man from the video." But their eyes held no anger, only quiet pity. He walked through the narrow paths until he reached a small church with peeling white paint. An old priest sat outside, reading a Bible. Tendo approached and removed his cap. "Father, I'm looking for a woman named Mama Lowry. She's my mother." The priest closed his book slowly. His eyes softened. "You're her son?" Tendo nodded, heart pounding. "Yes, sir. Please, where is she?" The priest stood, placed a gentle hand on Tendo's shoulder, and said quietly, "Come with me, my child." They walked down a narrow path lined with tall grass. The wind rustled softly through the leaves. Birds chirped above them. Finally, they reached an open space beneath a large almond tree. The ground was fresh with turned earth. A small wooden cross stood there, carved in shaky letters, "Mama Lowry, Mother of Mercy." Tendo froze. His breath caught in his throat. "No, no, father," he whispered. "Tell me she's not." The priest bowed his head. "She went peacefully 2 days ago. The villagers buried her here, beneath this tree she loved." Tendo dropped to his knees. Mud stained his trousers, but he didn't care. He placed the bouquet on the small grave and whispered, "I came too late, Mama. I thought I still had time." His voice broke. "I forgot that a mother cannot wait forever for a son who only remembers how to regret." The wind stirred, shaking loose a shower of almond leaves. They drifted down slowly, brushing against his shoulders like soft hands. The priest stood beside him in silence. After a long while, he said, "She left one more thing for you." He handed Tendo a folded piece of paper, its edges damp from rain. Tendo opened the note with trembling fingers. The ink was smudged but still readable. If one day you return and I am gone, don't cry too long. Turn your tears into a river that will help other mothers find light. He pressed the note to his chest, sobbing softly. The priest knelt beside him and said, "She believed you would change, my son. She said forgiveness is not silence, it's the beginning of healing." Tendo looked up at the sky through tears. Sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the grave in gold. "Then I'll do what she asked," he whispered. "I'll turn my tears into a river." The priest smiled faintly. "Then her love still lives." That evening, the villagers gathered around the almond tree. Some carried candles, others brought flowers. The priest led them in prayer. Tendo stood quietly among them, his head bowed. A soft breeze carried the sound of distant drums. When the prayer ended, an old woman approached him. "Your mother once helped me," she said. "She gave me food when I had none. She said God never forgets a kind heart." Tears filled Tendo's eyes again. "I didn't deserve her," he said. The woman shook her head. "No child truly deserves a mother's love. But every child can honor it." Her words sank deep into his soul. The next morning, Tendo visited the village carpenter. "Please," he said, "make me a signboard for her grave." The man nodded and worked through the day. By sunset, he handed Tendo a polished wooden board. Carved into it were the words, "Mama Lari, a mother's heart never dies." Tendo placed it at the head of the grave, knelt once more, and whispered, "I'll make sure the world remembers you, Mama. Not for my shame, but for your light." A bird chirped above him, as if answering his promise. Back in Lagos, reporters waited for Tendo's first public appearance. They expected excuses, maybe a speech full of polished words. But when he finally stood before the cameras, he wore a plain white shirt. No suit, no bodyguards. His voice was steady and calm. "I once built an empire," he said, "but I destroyed the home that made me. Today, I am not here to defend myself. I am here to begin again." The crowd listened in silence. "This isn't about forgiveness," he continued. "It's about change. Because a mother's tears should never become headlines." When the press conference ended, the city was quiet. Later that night, people saw new posters across Lagos, the Mother in White Foundation. No one knew who printed them. The next morning, newspapers carried a headline, "Tendo Lari launches foundation to support abandoned mothers." In the photo, Tendo stood beside a group of elderly women, holding a bouquet of daisies. Beneath the picture, a single line read, "Forgiveness is not silence. It is the seed of change." The city that once mocked him began to listen. The foundation grew quickly. Every month, they sent food, medicine, and clothes to mothers living alone in rural areas. They opened a small shelter called Mama Lari's Home, where old women laughed, cooked, and told stories of their youth. Tendo visited often, sitting with them like a son among many mothers. "You remind me of her," he would say softly, and one of the women would pat his hand and reply, "Then love us like you loved her." Slowly, his smile returned, quieter, humbler, more human. Months turned into a year. Lagos began to see him differently. Schools invited him to speak about gratitude. Churches told the story of the Mother in White during Mother's Day services. One evening, while closing the office, Tendo saw a little girl sweeping the floor. She looked up shyly and said, "Sir, my mother works here now." "Thank you." Her smile was bright like morning sun. Tendo smiled back. "Tell your mother I said she's the true boss here." The girl giggled. That sound, pure and joyful, felt like a blessing. Every Sunday, Tendo returned to the village. He brought flowers, sometimes food for the elders, sometimes toys for the children. The villagers no longer whispered when he came. They welcomed him like family. Under the almond tree, he would sit quietly beside his mother's grave. "I hope you're proud of me now, Mama," he would say. "I'm still learning." The wind would rustle the leaves, and he always imagined her voice replying, "Keep learning, my son. Keep giving." One afternoon, as he sat there, a young journalist approached him. "Sir," she asked gently, "why did you choose to name the foundation after your mother?" He smiled faintly. "Because I once tried to hide her. Now, I want the world to know her name. She was poor, but her love was the richest thing I ever had." The journalist nodded. "What lesson would you give others?" Tendo looked at the horizon. "Never build walls so high that your mother's voice can't reach you." Soon, stories of the foundation spread beyond Nigeria. Donations came from Nairobi, Accra, and London. Videos showed mothers singing and laughing in new homes built from the funds. One woman said on camera, "I lost my family, but the Mother in White Foundation gave me another." When Tendo watched the clip, tears filled his eyes. "Mama," he whispered, "your light is traveling farther than I ever dreamed." The photo of her, the one with him as a boy eating roasted corn, hung on his office wall. He looked at it every morning before work. One evening, a thunderstorm rolled over Lagos. The power went out. Tendo stood by the window, watching the rain wash the city clean. Suddenly, a memory flashed. His mother walking away from the church, her scarf flying like a white flag. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I wish I could tell you how sorry I am." Then, as lightning split the sky, he saw it. A soft white scarf caught on the wind outside his window. It fluttered once, twice, and vanished into the rain. He smiled faintly. "Message received, Mama," he murmured. The next morning, he called his team together. "We'll expand the foundation," he said. "We'll open centers across Africa, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa. Every mother we help will carry her light forward." His staff clapped quietly. Later, he walked alone through the garden behind the office, where white flowers bloomed. A small plaque stood there. "For Mama Laurie, whose love built what hands could not." He touched it gently. "You're everywhere, Mama," he said. "Even in the wind." A year later, the foundation hosted its first anniversary in the village of Onika, where Mama Laurie was buried. The event was simple: villagers, mothers from the shelters, and children carrying white flowers. Tendo stood by the almond tree, wearing a plain white shirt. He began to speak, his voice low but strong. "I once brought shame to this place," he said. "But today we bring light." He looked around at the smiling faces. "My mother taught me that true love doesn't need apologies. It only needs to continue." When he finished, he placed a bouquet of daisies on her grave. A sudden gust of wind rose, lifting the white scarf that lay at the base of the cross. It swirled through the air, danced in circles, then came to rest gently across his shoulders. The crowd gasped softly. Tendo smiled and looked up. The sky glowed with golden light. "She's here," someone whispered. The women began to sing, a soft, beautiful hymn that echoed across the fields. The sound of drums joined in, slow and steady like a heartbeat. Tendo closed his eyes and let the song wash over him. For the first time since that terrible day, his heart felt light. The pain had not vanished, it had simply learned to shine. When the music faded, he turned to the villagers and said, "Let every child here remember this. A mother's love is the first home we ever have. Don't lock yourself out of it." The children clapped. The mothers smiled. And above them, the almond leaves shimmered like tiny drops of sunlight. As the sun set, the village glowed in warm orange light. Tendo stood alone for a moment, watching the sky. "You see, Mama," he whispered, "your story didn't end with pain. It became hope." He turned to leave, but a soft wind brushed his cheek, carrying the faint scent of lilies. He smiled. Somewhere, somehow, he felt her presence, peaceful, proud, and eternal. He walked down the red road toward the waiting crowd, each step lighter than the last. The camera lights blinked, children laughed, and the drums played one final rhythm, not of sorrow, but of healing. And so the Mother in White lived on, not as a memory of shame, but as a light that would never fade. Please like and share, and don't forget to hit on the subscribe button.